J.R.R. Tolkien, A Life Inspired by Wyatt North. Like many millions upon millions of people, I am a huge fan of The Lord of the Rings. The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, and especially for me, The Silmarillion are some of my favorite books. But I've never known all that much about the author, J.R.R. Tolkien, outside of his friendship with C.S. Lewis, his service in the military during World War I, and how he was a committed Catholic. That was really all I knew about the man, and I wanted to fill in the blanks of knowing more about the author, and I was hoping to get that information by reading Wyatt North's J.R.R. Tolkien, A Life Inspired. And while yes, this book did fill in some of the blanks, and I learned some really interesting facts about J.R.R. Tolkien, the book was enjoyable to read, yet at the same time it was still disappointing. I don't say this very often, but what was disappointing was how short the book was. At only about 100 pages, the author breezed past so many moments where I would have loved for him to dwell on those just a little bit longer. This is actually one of the most difficult books to review because it was just so short. So all I'm really going to do is give to you the most interesting facts I learned about J.R.R. Tolkien in this book. First, I learned that J.R.R. Tolkien was born in South Africa. How could I have not have known that fact? How was that not on my radar at all? To learn about his birth in South Africa and then his father's death while Tolkien was at such a young age, and then his mother, her death followed shortly thereafter once she had brought him back to England. And now I think I understand a little bit why in his books we don't really have a lot of quality parent-child relationships. Tolkien never had one himself. I loved reading about how he was such a lazy pupil for the most part, and not surprised to learn that the only thing that really interested him was languages. I really wonder if he was born in the 21st century, if he would have been making all of his own apps and video games as a kid instead. But it was also cool to learn how the climbing of the mountains in Switzerland ended up being his inspiration for the journey up the Misty Mountains in his books. I just wish he could have made a trip to New Zealand to view those mountains because they are breathtaking, and I would have loved to know how he felt about Peter Jackson's use of New Zealand as Middle-earth in the films. Now, I had read before about Tolkien's disgust for industrialization, how it ruined the English countryside of his youth. But one thing that made it a lot more concrete in my mind was reading about how Tolkien had detachable shirt collars that he needed to change multiple times each day because they were covered in grime from the local coal-fired factories. I mean, we complain about air pollution these days, but needing detachable shirt collars because they're going to get covered in so much grime, it should make us appreciate how much cleaner the world is today than it was during Tolkien's time. And it also makes you understand why he could see the factories of his day as Mordor. I think the next time I read the book, I'm going to view the hobbits a little bit different to understand that Tolkien saw the four major hobbit characters in the books, especially Samwise, as based off of soldiers that he fought alongside or specifically fought underneath him in World War I. So we should see those hobbits like the men in the trenches who are giving up everything in the fight for their country. And with Tolkien's hatred of industry, I did enjoy this line in the book. When World War II found his son Christopher in the RAF, Tolkien wrote to him that he couldn't be more horrified if a hobbit had learned to ride a Nazgul in order to liberate the Shire. And North's discussion on Tolkien's use of allegory was really good, and how he saw The Lord of the Rings against a backdrop of religion was enlightening as well. So I gotta say, there were a lot of good moments in the book, many times where I thought, that's so cool, I didn't know that. I had no idea that Tom Bombadil was based off of a Dutch doll that was on his son Michael's shelf. There were a lot of just really nice little tidbits like that scattered throughout the book. But at the end of the day, I was hoping for more. I think this book is really just, it's a seed of what could be a really great and really wonderful book if it was just fleshed out a little more. On the other hand, though, if you are someone who wants to learn more about J.R.R. Tolkien, but you only have enough time to read 100 pages about the author, although honestly, if you're reading Tolkien books a lot, I'm going to assume you have more time for 100 pages. But if that's all the time you got, then maybe this is the book for you. But if you are a huge fan of his writings, if you are fine with reading longer length books, then I suggest maybe you look elsewhere for a stirring and fulfilling biography on the life of J.R.R. Tolkien. If you enjoyed this review and you want to stay engaged in the wonderful world of Christian literature, I would encourage you to subscribe to the Rev Reads YouTube channel.